Huh? That's the last of the bean tacos. Whoa, beans give me problems. You had a whole pot full. Wait, what have I done? Hey! Hail, Grand Kai! Yeah, Daddy likes it. So be it! If you truly believe this is the right decision, then you will have to get around me to do it.
Hey everybody, it's Poohead189, and today we have a highly requested and long-awaited video by many of you. Today we are going to discuss the Kais and their various subspecies or subpeoples, however you would like to say it. I was originally going to make a few other planned videos before this one, but seeing as people have been patient for a while, I felt I should go ahead and get this video out for you to enjoy before I get into the others in the pipeline. And before we begin, I think it is good to take a small side note on the other deities in the setting, since the Kais themselves are an integral and large part of this divine structure, and it's best to do a small discussion on the non-Kais first, so you have a basis in understanding the deities of the setting. And as usual in my videos, I will not be discussing anything from the Dragon Ball Super anime or manga, so we will not discuss gods of destruction or angels and the like. We will only be looking at the Kais of the original manga, and a small mention of those lesser deities under them. Now let's begin. Before we get to the Kais, let me do a quick breakdown of the regular gods, or kami in Japanese. As you might have guessed, the best example of that tier of deity is the character Kami, who served as god of earth for over 4 centuries. Called guardians in the dub, these gods are in charge of the safeguarding and administration of singular planets. We do not get any mention of any other guardians in the original manga, but there are a few mentions of them in filler. I recall one bit in a dub that blamed the cataclysm on Namek as the planet's god or guardian being fed up with how wicked the people had become and had caused a huge calamity to wipe them all out. Of course, it seems unlikely that the guardian of a planet has permission to simply wipe out his flock, and we cannot guess how they could accomplish that. Kami has various special abilities, and is clearly extremely strong compared to even the strongest of his planet's population, bar the Z-Fighters. Yet a lot of that is revealed to be because he is Namekian rather than a guardian or god, although one power he does have that we can surmise comes from being a god is him being able to restore the moon. We simply have very little information beyond that on his godly powers. However, it is clear they are caretakers and stewards of planets, and can appoint replacements and choose helpers like Mr. Popo. Next up is King Yema, or King Enma, who is the king of ogres and the judge of the dead. He decides who goes to heaven or hell, or if a lucky soul is allowed to travel Snake Way and receive training from the Kai of their part of the galaxy. He seems to be of a higher rank than Kami, and is apparently stronger than Raditz, though he also states none can beat him, despite the fact King Kai is stronger. It might mean that he has complete control of everyone who arrives there, regardless of strength. Considering how powerful many aliens are, it seems likely, or else he would have been overpowered long ago from numerous individuals. Though it is possible that when they arrive there, they are already in cloud form unless guided by their deity. You'd think that would definitely be the case, but apparently he did fight Raditz, or at least boasted about his strength for handling Raditz, so it's hard to say. Now that we covered our bases, let us begin the video in earnest and speak on the Kais. But I must preface that by saying that while the Saiyans, Namekians, and androids sometimes have contradictions from the manga and the interviews and guides, there is very little in all of Dragon Ball that is as convoluted and contradictory as the lore on the Kais. Most of their origins are stated in various sources, but the main source is in the Toriyama interview for the Dragon Ball Super Exciting Guide character volume, and much of that seems somewhat contradictory with what we see elsewhere. But to not get lost in the weeds, with that being said, let's dive in. The Kais are a race of extremely long-lived, divine beings that dwell in the other world or afterlife, and their entire existence is dedicated to directing and safeguarding the universe. Now, the Kais like King Kai are called Kaios, and the Kais like Supreme Kai are called Kaioshin. The name Kaio means World King or King of Worlds, and the name Kaioshin means God of the Boundary King, apparently. The term Shin, which is the name Kami used masquerading as a human and the name of the Supreme Kai of the East in Japanese, has many different meanings, but a few of them are true, heart, God, or heavenly. Okay, this all seems pretty simple, right? They are the race of higher deities in the Dragon Ball universe, essentially. However, while technically correct, it also gets more complicated. Kais are actually a collection of subspecies or perhaps even candidates to a wider race of beings called Shinjin or core people, who are born as fruits from a giant tree. You see, apparently, Toriyama has said his cosmos are the shape of a giant ball, and at the very center of that ball is a planet of Kais, called Kaishin-sei, or the World Core, where Kais are born, as well as other peoples evidently, I guess meaning the core peoples. The planet's population is about 80 in all, and as stated, there is a huge world tree on the planet where special fruit grows. This fruit drops and becomes Kais, actually, or core peoples. It seems there are two different types of fruit. The first is the normal, more common fruit that becomes a Kai that we know and recognize. The next is a golden fruit, creating a Kai that is far more powerful and from one source, far longer lived, and that manifests into one of the Supreme Kais. It seems the average Kai lives around 75,000 years, whilst Supreme Kais can seemingly live far longer. East Supreme Kai, otherwise known as just the Supreme Kai or Shin, is apparently over 5 million years old, so we truly do not know how long they can live. We must note that while the Kais likely make up the majority of the core peoples, they are not all of them. Kibito is apparently of that wider race, but as for his particular subspecies, if we can call it that, we simply do not know. We do know he serves as the retainer and bodyguard of the Supreme Kais, but what kind of fruit he was born of or if he was created by some other means remains a mystery. We do know he has special abilities that Kais do not, such as instant teleportation and the ability to heal individuals of wounds as well as restore their energies. Also, a brief side note, it is said that certain Kais are born inherently evil and fall to the realm of demons and essentially become demonic versions of Kais and like kings of demons, but that is not in the original manga, so we're not going to really talk about them, but I just want you to know that can happen, apparently. Anyway, the Kais themselves appear to be segregated into 4 divine directions from Hindu scriptures: north, south, east, and west. The lower Kais appear to be above the guardians or gods of planets and King Yima, and watch over an entire quadrant of the universe. Now, of course, the main example we have of the normal Kais is King Kai, otherwise known as North Kaio. We do not know how old he is, but as he appears somewhat middle-aged, I'd say he's likely close to 40,000 years old. He is tasked with overseeing the northern quadrant of the galaxy, and much like how Kami has farsight when it comes to happenings on Earth, King Kai appears to have farsight across the galaxy or his quadrant of the universe if he concentrates. He can not only talk to anyone in his quadrant and probably the universe as a whole, but he can also act as a conduit for others to speak to whomever he directs them to, through their minds. King Kai is also fairly strong, apparently stronger than King Yima. And even if King Yima does have the hypothetical power to handle anyone who comes before him regardless of power, Kami still speaks to Goku as if Goku's assessment of him being stronger than Raditz is correct. And if King Kai is more powerful than him, yet weaker than Nappa, as King Kai says, he is weaker than the Saiyans, then in my opinion he is likely between 2 to 6,000. If I had to give an estimation, I would say King Kai is around 3,500, which is the same power level as Piccolo during the Saiyan battle, or maybe slightly stronger at 4,000. It's unlikely he is more powerful than Goku once Goku left King Kai's planet, however. King Kai is certainly strong enough to withstand the 10 times gravity of his planet, a planet which is apparently a scaled-down version of the original core world the Kais came from, at least when it comes to looks and aesthetics. As for the other Kais, we get good looks at all of them in the anime filler. However, only South Kai is shown in the manga. It is unknown if they have different powers or strengths compared to North Kai, or if they have 2 companions like he does. And yes, I am aware that in the manga, King Kai is only shown to have bubbles to live with. Some of you might have missed the fact that Gregory is actually not in the manga, and that he was an anime-only creation. However, I consider him canon, as Toriyama made Gregory himself and liked having him included in the series, and since nowhere in the manga says that King Kai only lives with Bubbles, at that point, we can go with Gregory also being canon. Kais, in tune with most of Toriyama's mythos, have a particular interest and skill in martial arts. Every Kai appears to be master trainers of great heroes, though it is stated that only King Yima and Goku have trained under King Kai. We also see South Kai with his pupil Papoi, so by most people's estimation, that seems to be a part of their job description. Also, apparently, if King Yima gives someone the go-ahead and they can make it across all of Snake Way and survive the high gravity of King Kai's planet, one could also learn jokes from King Kai as well, but since only 2 people have ever succeeded on the journey, it's likely never happened before. Back to the training of great heroes, however, from what it says in the manga, Goku's training under King Kai is equivalent to training a few thousand years on Earth, though it is unknown if it is because of the gravity, King Kai's methods, or the techniques he learns. It's likely a combination of all 3. And as stated earlier, it seems all Kais do this as evidence of South Kai treating his champion Papoi the same as how North Kai treats Goku. The 4 Kais serve for life and then are replaced by other Kais. The way Kais are replaced are by drawing lots, like the World Martial Arts Tournament on Earth. It's the same way with Supreme Kais, evidently. With that, I would usually switch to Supreme Kais, but we need to speak of the Grand Kai. The Grand Kai is the overseer of the 4 Kais of the various quadrants, whilst he is only seen in the anime. However, Toriyama also made his design much like how he made Gregory's design, and Grand Kai is spoken of in the manga, which means not only that he exists, but that the Grand Kai that we see in filler is as close to canon as he could get. It is unknown how strong he is, but generally it appears as though the higher up a being is, the more powerful he is, so he is likely stronger than King Kai. He has a fairly esteemed or legendary status amongst the Kais. In fact, when Piccolo was facing the Supreme Kai in the ring of the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament, and he forfeits, it was because he assumed the Supreme Kai was actually the Grand Kai, and so the Grand Kai is truly a lofty position, although I will say that I doubt he is stronger than any of Dr. Giro's Z androids. However, as we all know, the Supreme Kais are even higher up the list, and have the highest position in the cosmos in all of the Dragon Ball universe within the original manga. Of course, once again, the majority of the Supreme Kais we see are in the anime filler. It's unknown how much, if any, involvement Toriyama had on them or the Kais before them that were not North and South Kais, but seeing as most of them are only shown in filler, they can serve as the representations of their own quadrants. Although, just like we see South Kai in the manga, we also see the Supreme Kai of the South in the Eastern Supreme Kai's flashback, which is a good segue to the fact that there are supposed to be 4 Supreme Kais like the Lesser Kais below them, and a Grand Supreme Kai as well. Essentially, they are administrators to the managers of the universe, let's say. Eastern Supreme Kai, or Shin, is what we'll use as a basis. As befitting their station, Supreme Kais are extremely powerful. It is true that during the Buu Saga, the Supreme Kai began to be outstripped in power fairly early, and he was very wary of Babidi's minions, particularly Dabura. However, the biggest contention of Supreme Kai's power is the very old debate of Supreme Kai versus Piccolo, and why Piccolo stepped down when he was going to face him in the tournament. First, let's discuss Piccolo's likely power. And for that, we need to go back to the Android arc, when Piccolo fused with Kami. Piccolo at that point was equal to Android 17 in power, but let's put a stake in the ground and walk backwards. As stated in my Namekian video, Piccolo tends to get more out of training than most anyone for his Namekian training techniques. Because of that, he went from being manhandled by third form Frieza to being stronger than Android 20, which is a huge upgrade, greater than the Super Saiyan multiplier, likely. Then he fused with Kami and matched Android 17, and then he went into the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, or the Room of Spirit and Time, for a day, of course meaning a year within. With that same training, the Saiyans went from being weaker than Android 17 and 18 to all being somewhere between Semi-Perfect Cell and Perfect Cell. However, one needs to remember that a part of that is due to the new forms of Super Saiyan, rather than just pure training. Then again, Mastered Super Saiyan supposedly does not increase the Super Saiyan multiplier, but either way. Piccolo underwent the same year as them, and Piccolo, as stated, consistently receives more power over similar periods of time than even the Saiyans, though it is canonical that Goku and Gohan did outstrip Piccolo in power, and Cell did talk more about Vegeta and Trunks than Piccolo when discussing who could fight him. However, we can still accurately surmise easily that Piccolo could dominate Semi-Perfect Cell and at least put up a good fight against Vegeta or Trunks in their ascended Super Saiyan forms. It's unknown how the roughly 7 years of peace affected Piccolo's power, but it is likely he at least kept his strength up, if not increased it, as it's within his character, even fused with the more sedentary Kami. But then the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament comes and Piccolo enters, ready to fight even before the Saiyans decide not to become Super. Then again, so did Krillin and Android 18, both of which are easily no match for Piccolo and the Saiyans. But all of this included, I would say that Piccolo's power is likely slightly below Mastered Super Saiyan Goku in the Cell Saga. Now, we have two statements regarding why Piccolo forfeited. On the one hand, when Goku asks why Piccolo stepped down, he states, "Yeah, our dimensions are too different," which is a pretty standard way of saying that someone is more powerful than someone else. However, when Supreme Kai steps off the stage, he rationalizes on Piccolo stepping down as evidence that Piccolo must have figured out his identity rather than his power, as Piccolo used to be the god or guardian of the planet. And while one could make the argument that Piccolo learning that meant Piccolo knew he was weaker, by that logic, Piccolo would have stepped down when facing Super Saiyan 2 Goku or Vegeta as well, but he was fully prepared to fight both of them. So it doesn't really hold up in my estimation. And you'll find people going back and forth on this old argument on whether Piccolo stepped down for Supreme Kai's station or power. Either way, the fact that it's an extremely contentious topic means that it is very likely that Supreme Kai's power lies somewhere between Semi-Perfect Cell and Perfect Cell. And Supreme Kai states himself that out of the 5 Supreme Kais of his time, he was the weakest. So it is likely that the stronger South Supreme Kai could either fight Perfect Cell toe-to-toe or perhaps even be stronger. Although one does need to note that Eastern Supreme Kai, and likely the other Supreme Kais, are more than their base power. Supreme Kai also has special telekinetic abilities that allow him to fight above his normal weight class. When Gohan goes Super Saiyan 2 facing Kibito, Supreme Kai is able to immobilize Gohan with some effort, and later when Fat Buu is approaching him with the intent to kill, Supreme Kai uses a similar ability to cause Buu to stagger for a moment. And it is true that Buu uses the same technique to stagger him back, but Buu is also shown using telekinetic abilities later on. And honestly, I would say that Supreme Kai's telekinetic abilities, though they affected Fat Buu less, are likely more powerful from his base strength than Buu's is to his base strength. And one also cannot forget that when Fat Buu blasted Super Saiyan 2 Gohan with a powerful energy blast, Supreme Kai was able to destroy the beam with his telekinesis, saving Gohan's life. So even if Supreme Kai is obviously a bit weaker than Perfect Cell and is the weakest of the Supreme Kais, he likely would have given Perfect Cell quite a lot of trouble with his telekinetic abilities if they had fought. However, as I stated at the beginning, there are a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to the Kai lore. Here's a few examples. For starters, Toriyama stated that they are born of fruit and are neither male nor female, which means they are likely much like Namekians, without genitalia of any kind. However, King Kai does state that he likes to see how far he pees, which is a contradiction, obviously, not to mention the fact that it is very likely King Kai is referred to in male pronouns, though I admit that is hard to discern because gendered pronouns in general are fairly rare in Japanese. Another example is their lifespans. As stated earlier, Kais are said to live 75,000 years, but Supreme Kai is apparently over 5 million. And though I reconciled that by surmising the Supreme Kais just live longer, that's still not stated, and it is a contradiction that we do still need to acknowledge. Also, apparently, the Kais and Supreme Kais are chosen from the core people by drawing lots, much like a tournament. They do so after the death of a Kai. However, when King Kai died after Cell self-destructed, he was not replaced in the series, but he remained. Perhaps it was because he did not die of old age and was allowed to still serve the time until his lifespan would have been up, but that is still also odd. And Toriyama states that there are only 80 core peoples in the world they reside on, and likely they all share a similar appearance. Yet King Kai was surprised when Supreme Kai and Kibito revealed themselves, despite having been able to look in the entire time, as if he still expected nothing. One would think that even if he did not know Shin was the Supreme Kai, he would have recognized two core people like himself, with the pointed ears and the different colored skin, but apparently not. And also something that's risky is Old Kai, who we need to talk about because he adds a lot of information, but his inclusion also adds a couple of problems. The reasoning is because of the fusion that he had with the Old Witch, which is shown in the manga. It's difficult to maintain what his capabilities were as a Kai and what powers he had received from his fusion with the Witch. For example, Old Kai was able to tell that Boo and Gotenks had left this reality and had gone to another dimension, meaning the Room of Spirit and Time or the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. And I think that is a Kai trait, as Kais are administrators of the universe and able to oversee its denizens. It's very similar how, when Super Boo did his human extinction attack, which killed most people on Earth, Supreme Kai could sense it, when Goku could not. Supreme Kai's ability there was not likely the mere sensing of ki, but a sense based on the fact that he was a Kai of high station. However, while it is highly likely, that is just a theory. We don't know which of Old Kai's abilities are from the Witch. The Old Kai's potential unlock, for example, could be one of his own abilities, that of the Witch, or an old technique Kais millions of years ago learned, but it was lost over the ages. Also, I need to point out that the Old Kai is a Kai that is from 15 generations ago. And if Kais live to be longer than 5 million years old, then that is easily over 75 million years ago. But let's get back to it. In the Viz, he calls his potential unlock technique a psychic ability, so it's hard to really ascertain. Though he does say the Witch's abilities are magical and not psychic, so I'm leaning toward the potential unlock being an ability of his own skill, rather than an ability because he is a Kai or because of the fusion. One magic ability from the Witch, for instance, I would say, is pretty likely Old Kai summoning a crystal ball like fortune teller Baba does. I would say that's pretty explicitly one of the Witch's abilities. Supreme Kai and Old Kai, however, can both give their lives to grant Goku one, as Old Kai does it and Supreme Kai offers to do it. So I would consider that a Kai ability, much like the transferring of ki to another to make them stronger. Also, I do need to point out, going back to the core world where the Kais appear from, the sacred world of the Kais, where the Supreme Kais reside, is not that world. The sacred world of the Kais is a world where the current Supreme Kais reside for their lofty station. It is not where they are born, and the world tree does not reside there. I just wanted to let everyone know that. Okay, everyone. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the video. And special thanks to friend of the channel Clearin for reading through the script and reminding me of a few things. Also, shout out to Dave for translating, and our mutual friend Lethal Blues for being one of the 0.0006% of people who have been permanently banned from League of Legends.